What I am about to tell you will shatter the most sacred illusions upon which you have built your life. This truth is so deep that most people die without ever touching it. Today, I will reveal to you a paradox that only the greatest sages of all times have understood. A paradox so contradictory to everything you've been taught that your mind will resist every word. But if you find the courage to accept this truth, if you allow it to penetrate the deepest layers of your consciousness, you will awaken from the longest sleep in human history. Be warned. After these words, you will no longer be able to live superficially. The depth you acquire will be both your blessing and your curse. Are you ready to look into the abyss of human existence? Let's go. Your entire life has been built on a fundamental lie. You were told that life is the most precious thing you have, that you must protect it, cherish every moment, value what you possess. And you believed it. You built an entire philosophy of existence around this lie, a system of values, a meaning of being. But now I will destroy this foundation with one sentence that will change your entire understanding of what it means to be alive. A person who values life too much is shallow. These words cut deep, don't they? Every cell of your being revolts against them. How can one not value life? This is all we have, your mind screams. But it is precisely in that scream that lies the tragedy of shallow existence. The one who clings to life lives in constant fear of death, and the one who lives in fear of death can never truly live. He exists in survival mode, not in a state of authentic being. He guards what he should be spending. He hoards what he should be pouring out. He economizes where he should be generous and reckless. Life is not a treasure to be stored. It is a currency to be spent. Look at those who cling to their lives too tightly. They avoid risk, choose safety over opportunity, prefer comfort to growth, trade dreams for stability. They live as if they had a spare life locked away in a safe, as if death could be deceived by caution. But here's the bitter irony. Those who fear death the most are the least alive. They waste their lives trying to preserve them. They squander years attempting to extend years. They turn existence into a single precautionary measure against the inevitable. They die a little every day in order to avoid dying. Look at history. Great souls of all eras understood this paradox. Socrates drank the poison with a smile because he knew truth mattered more than the philosopher. Jesus walked toward the cross because he knew the idea was greater than the individual. Buddha renounced everything worldly because he realized enlightenment was worth any price. Giordano Bruno burned at the stake for a truth more precious than his life. And these are not isolated examples. In Indian tradition, there is the story of Narasimha, the avatar of Vishnu, who emerged from a pillar to protect the faith of his devotee Prahlada. For Prahlada, life was nothing compared to the truth of God, and thus he did not fear torture or death at the hands of his own father. In Japanese culture, the samurai, for whom life had no value in itself, they celebrated the way of Bushido, where death was not defeat but the natural completion of service. A samurai who feared death was considered already dead. Only the one who accepted it in advance could fight freely and with honor. In Christianity, the martyrs, who walked into the Roman amphitheaters under the roar of the crowd, yet carried within themselves more life than those seated in the stands, because their spirit burned brighter and stronger than the multitude guarding its existence. In the Sufi tradition, the dervishes, who through dance and ecstasy burned themselves in the fire of love for God, for they understood, the point is not to preserve life, but to dissolve it in the great. They did not despise life. No, they understood that there are things that make life worth losing. The soldier who throws himself onto a grenade lives more fully in his last seconds than the coward in his entire long life. The mother who sacrifices herself for her child becomes, in that moment of self-giving, more alive than the selfish person across decades of self-preservation. The artist who burns himself in the fire of creation learns more about the essence of being than the cautious, ordinary man who survives into old age. Depth is not measured by duration, but by intensity, not by the number of days lived, but by the quality of the moments lived, not by how much you took from life, but by how much you gave it. Life is not time to be saved. It is energy to be burned. Remember the most vivid moments of your existence. When did you feel the most real, the most yourself, the most alive? It was in the moments when you forgot about self-preservation, when you loved without calculation, when you created without thinking of profit, when you risked for a dream, when you gave more than you could afford. That was when you did not value life. You lived it. You did not guard it, you wasted it. You did not preserve it, you spent it recklessly. And it was precisely then that you were the deepest, the truest, the most alive. The paradox of life is this: the less you value it, the more of it you receive. Those who value life too highly are afraid to spend it on something meaningful. They hoard it like a miser hoards gold, and in the end they die rich but poor. They had all the currency of existence, but they bought nothing of value with it. No experiences, no heroic deeds, no beauty created, no love known, no mark left behind. They lived long, but not deeply. They existed for many years, but lived not a single day. They preserved life, but lost the reason to live. The deep person understands. Life is not given to be preserved, but to be spent on something greater than life itself, on an idea that outlives the body, on a love stronger than death, on a creation that remains after the creator is gone, on a service that changes the world. The shallow person wants to live as long as possible. The deep one, as meaningfully as possible. Look at the saints of all religions. They renounced worldly pleasures, subjected themselves to deprivation, often walked into martyrdom. From the point of view of someone who clings to life, they were mad. Why deny yourself pleasures? Why risk for abstract ideals? But they knew what the ordinary never knew. There are ways of existing worse than death, and there are ways of dying better than existence. Their examples live on in legend. Moses, who led his people through the desert, was ready to die, but not ready to betray the mission. The Persian poet Rumi wrote, "Die before you die, and you will know immortality." African shamans sacrificed themselves for their tribe because they understood life is not personal, but collective. They knew a life lived only for oneself is not life at all, but slow death. Existence without a purpose greater than existence itself is not a blessing, but a curse. Breathing without meaning is not life, but agony. And so they chose a short life with eternal meaning over a long life with none. History remembers their names. While millions of smart and cautious people who preserved their lives disappeared into oblivion. For depth leaves a mark, but the surface vanishes without a trace. Nietzsche wrote, "It is good to die for one who has never lived." These words seem cruel, but within them lies wisdom capable of overturning your entire understanding of existence. Most people never truly live. They spend decades in a state of half-sleep, half-life, half-existence. They flee from pain and lose joy. They avoid risk and miss opportunities. They defend themselves against loss and gain nothing. They save their strength and die weak. They economize time and waste life. They think they live, but in reality they are only slowly dying. They stretch the process of dying over 70 to 80 years and call it life. Real life begins only when you stop guarding it. When you are ready to lose everything for the sake of what truly matters. When you can say, "Let my life be short, but let it be bright." When you choose 1 minute of genuine existence over a year of shallow survival. This is not a call to suicide or recklessness. This is a call to live with such intensity that death ceases to be an enemy. To live in such a way that each day is so complete that if it turns out to be your last, you will not regret it. Look at those who truly changed the world. At the revolutionaries of spirit, the discoverers of truth, the creators of beauty. Darwin risked his career for the theory of evolution. Galileo risked his life for the truth about the solar system. Curie sacrificed her health for the discovery of radioactivity. Van Gogh gave his sanity for art. All of them placed something higher than their own lives. And that is why their lives became immortal. They understood a human can die in two ways. One can die biologically, leaving behind ideas, creations, changes in the world. Or one can die spiritually, continuing to breathe, but already gone to meaning. The first death is transformation. The second is disappearance. A deep person chooses the first. He knows the body is temporary, but what he creates through the body can be eternal. That is why he does not economize his life force. He invests it in what will outlive his physical existence. The shallow person tries to take as much as possible from life. The deep one, to give as much as possible to life. The first treats life as a consumer. The second, as a creator. The first asks, "What can life give me?" The second asks, "What can I give to life?" And here lies the irony. The one who tries to take everything from life ends up with empty hands. But the one who gives everything to life gains immortality. Because life works according to the laws of paradox. If you want to receive, give. If you want to find yourself, lose yourself. If you want to live, die to everything shallow within you. If you want to become deep, stop clinging to the surface. Now you stand before a choice. You can continue to value your life in the petty sense that most people do. To guard it, economize it, stretch it out. To live cautiously, choose safety, avoid great risks and great achievements. And you will reach old age. Perhaps deep old age. You will accumulate experience, money, memories. You will pride yourself on knowing how to live properly. But when your hour comes, you will realize that you lived many years, yet never lived a single day truly. Or you can choose another path. The path of those who understand. Life is not duration, but depth. Not the quantity of days, but the quality of moments. Not what you preserved, but what you created. Not what you accumulated, but what you sacrificed for something higher. You can choose to live as if you have only one day. And that day is today. Not because you don't value life, but because you value it correctly. Not as a product to be economized, but as energy to be transformed into something greater. When you live with such intensity, every hour becomes a full life. Every decision, destiny shaping. Every action, meaningful. You stop postponing life for later because you understand. Life is not what will happen someday. Life is what is happening right now. In this now, you can be shallow or deep. You can guard yourself or spend yourself for greatness. You can exist or live. You can survive or create. The choice is always yours. But remember, depth cannot be accumulated gradually. It can only be chosen here and now. Look at the great cultures of the world. Each of them knew this paradox. The ancient Greeks exalted kalokagathia, the unity of beauty and virtue, where life had value only when filled with heroic deeds. The hero Achilles had a choice, a long but faceless life, or a short but glorious one. And he chose glory. In his choice, the essence of the paradox shines. Life is measured not in years, but in the fire burning within it. The Vikings believed it was better to die in battle than to live long in the shadows. For them, death was a doorway to Valhalla, where only those lived who were not afraid to spend their lives for a deed. African tribes held initiation rites, where a youth had to pass through risk, pain, trial, to prove he lived not for self-preservation, but for the clan, for the tribe, for what was greater than himself. In ancient China, the Confucians taught, true value is not life itself, but virtue, for which one may even die. In Mencius it is written, he who values life more than righteousness will lose both life and righteousness. And look at the practices of mystics. In Taoism, the sage dies to the trivial world to be reborn in the Tao. In Christian monasticism, the vow of renunciation, a voluntary death to earthly pleasures for the sake of higher life of the spirit. In shamanic practices, symbolic death, to pass initiation and return to the world as a new person. All these examples, different cultures, different traditions, different eras, but they are united by one thing, the understanding that clinging to life makes it empty, while the willingness to lose it makes it full. Right now, you can decide to stop valuing life in the shallow sense and start living it deeply. You can ask yourself not how to live longer, but how to live more meaningfully. You can stop saving your energy and start investing it into what is greater than you, into love that changes someone's life, into creation that outlives your body, into an idea that makes the world better, into service that fills with meaning not only your existence, but also the existence of others. And then your life will become not just a sequence of days, but a work of art. Not a museum artifact stored under glass, but a firework that lights up the sky. The art of life is not to preserve it, but to live it. The one who values life too much fears to spend it. But the one who understands life rightly is not afraid to spend it on what is worth the cost. The first dies a little every day. The second is reborn every day anew. The first counts the days. The second makes the days count. The first keeps life. The second creates from life. And it is the second who understands what it means to be deep. Right now, in this very second, you can make a choice. You can look at your life with new eyes. See it not as a treasure to be hidden away, but as a material from which a masterpiece can be created. You can ask yourself, if I had only one day left, how would I live it? And then begin to live every day exactly that way. Not because you truly have only one day left, but because that is the only way to live authentically. Because depth is not something accumulated with age. It is something chosen in every moment. And in this moment, right now, you can choose depth. Look at the great mystics of the East. In Zen tradition, monks said, "Live as if your hair were on fire." This metaphor does not mean worry and chaos, but ultimate sharpness and presence. A man whose hair is in flames does not think about tomorrow, does not postpone life. He lives in the present with absolute clarity and strength. The Sufis taught, true life begins when you die to yourself. This is not the death of the body, but the death of the petty I that clings to profit, comfort, and safety. When it dies, a new person is born, one through whom the fire of meaning flows. Remember the practices of the ancient American civilizations. Among the Maya, rulers performed ritual bloodletting, shedding their own blood to maintain connection with the gods and secure fertility for the people. For them, life was not an absolute value. It had meaning only when it served something greater. In Aztec culture, warriors sought to fall in battle so that their souls might accompany the sun. This was not madness, it was understanding. Life is valuable only when invested in something beyond itself. But look at modern man. He has surrounded himself with cushions of safety. His home, a fortress against pain; his job, insurance against risk; his entertainment, an attempt to forget. He lives for preservation, not for living. He fears loss, fears risk, fears pain. But in this caution, he deprives himself of the essential fullness. He is like someone who received a great treasure of gold, but, instead of investing it, locked it away in a chest. He dies rich, but poor in spirit. His chest is full of unused life. That is why deep cultures of the past created practices that broke the attachment to life. Among the Spartans, boys were thrown into harsh conditions where they had to survive without support to understand. Life is not a gift, but a trial. Among Siberian shamans, initiation often passed through symbolic death. The future shaman lay in isolation until the spirits disassembled his body to the bones and then reassembled him. Only the one who stopped clinging to life could become a channel of power. You may say, but this is cruel. Why sacrifice oneself for ideas or collective meanings? Isn't life given to rejoice, to love, to enjoy? Yes, but joy is not in preservation. True love is not in the fear of loss. Genuine pleasure is born the moment you stop counting minutes, when you give yourself completely. Remember your first true love. You did not count how many days it would last. You burned. Remember the moment of creativity when time vanished and you worked through the night, forgetting fatigue. Remember the risk you once took, when your heart beat as if it were the last moment. Were these not the most alive memories? Life is not the preservation of days. It is their burning for the sake of something greater than you. The world is full of stories of those who understood this. Leonardo da Vinci said, "Life without love is like death." But love for him was not only for people, but also for art, for science, for knowledge. He burned. He did not economize himself, and that is why his name lives for centuries. Alexander the Great lived only 32 years, yet in that time he built an empire that changed the map of the world. Those who lived longer are forgotten, but he remains a symbol of power and daring. In the 20th century, Marie Curie, who literally burned her body for science, and now her name resounds as a symbol of courage and discovery. Or Václav Havel, the writer turned president, willing to go to prison for ideas but not betray them. That is why every culture created the image of the hero. A hero is one who does not fear losing life for the sake of what makes it greater than itself. A hero is not the one who lives long. A hero is the one who lives in such a way that even death becomes a continuation of his path. You can be a hero in your own life, even if no one ever knows your name. It does not matter whether you save a nation or simply raise a child with love and honesty. Depth is not measured by scale, but by willingness to give everything. The one who hoards himself will never know this power. He will remain a shadow, a half-existence. But the one who stops guarding life becomes a flame. And here is the great paradox. When you stop valuing life in the shallow sense, life begins to value you. Events unfold differently. People are drawn to you. The energy of life itself flows through you. You stop fearing death, and for the first time you begin to live. For death is not an enemy. It is a mirror that shows whether you lived your life or merely postponed its end. The one who lives each day as if it were the last does not fear death. For him, it is only a point beyond which a trace remains. You can become that person. Right now, stop guarding life. Start living it. Stop accumulating days. Start creating meaning. Stop fearing loss. Start giving. Stop clinging to safety. Start going deep. Depth is a choice, and it is in your hands. Welcome to depth. Here, every day can become eternity, and every moment, immortality. Think of music. A symphony is not eternal. Its sound vanishes into the air. But that is precisely its power. It is beautiful not because it lasts forever, but because, in the moment of its sounding, it encompasses everything. Life is the same. Its value is not in its length, but in the intensity of its resonance. Think of poetry. A poem may be only a few lines, yet it can change a heart forever. Life is a poem, not a thick ledger of accounts. Think of a fire. Its worth is not in burning the longest, but in giving warmth and light. The one who wants to preserve the wood sits in cold and darkness. The one who sets it aflame gains warmth and light, and though the wood burns quickly, it illuminates his path. Depth is always risk. In every culture, depth was measured by the willingness to stake everything. Among Tibetan yogis, the practice of chad, where a monk imagines offering his own body to spirits, learning to release fear of death. Among Christian ascetics, the stylites who stood on pillars for decades to prove that flesh had no power over spirit. Among the Native Americans of the plains, the sun dance, where warriors pierced their skin and danced to exhaustion until they fell into trance, proving that spirit is greater than body. And all of these practices spoke the same truth. Stop fearing to lose life. Only then will you gain its fullness. But today we have forgotten this truth. Modern man lives for insurance, for medical policies, for pensions. He insures his life as he insures his property. He thinks he has conquered death with pills, technologies, comforts. Yet the more he hides his life behind glass, the less light there is within it. Have you seen the eyes of people in the subway, in shopping malls, in offices? These are the eyes of those who are surviving, not living. They guard themselves, but their inner fire has long gone out. Now imagine the person who goes against this. He may be poor or rich, famous or unknown, but he lives. His eyes burn because he does not economize himself. He writes a book knowing no one may buy it. He loves, knowing he may lose. He risks, knowing the chance of failure is high. He goes where his heart calls, not where fear directs. And here is the wonder. Even if he loses, he still wins. Because in the moment of risk, he lives more fully than those who spent their lives hiding behind walls of safety. History keeps thousands of names like these. Spartacus, a slave who rose against Rome, knowing death awaited him. He did not win, but his name became a symbol of freedom. Joan of Arc, a shepherd girl who raised an army and went against an empire. She was burned, but her spirit became a torch for a nation. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "I have a dream," knowing those words would cost him his life. He was killed, but his dream lives on. Depth is always a trace. Surface vanishes without a trace. Think of it. Millions lived at the same time as these heroes, but we do not know their names. They carefully preserved their lives and dissolved into the dust of history. But those who did not spare themselves remain eternal. Yet depth is not only in feats and heroism. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is in rising every day to care for a sick child without thinking of oneself. Sometimes it is in caring for others while in pain. Sometimes it is in writing poems in a notebook no one will ever read, but pouring one's soul into them. Depth is not always loud, but it is always full. It is measured not by the crowd's attention, but by the willingness to give one's whole self. That is why I say, tragedy is not in dying young. Tragedy is in living a whole life and never starting to live. Tragedy is in leaving without ever singing your song. You can become the person who sings your song. Let it be short. Let it not become an anthem for millions. But if it is true, even one person will hear it, and their life will change. And then you did not live in vain. Remember, the shallow person asks, "How much time do I have left?" The deep person asks, "What will I do with the time I have?" The shallow person preserves life. The deep one creates from life. And now, in this second, you have a choice. You can go on guarding life, turning it into a long but empty corridor where all doors are closed. Or you can fling the doors open and step into the fire. Yes, it is risk. Yes, it is pain. Yes, it may be brief. But only there does true life begin. So stop asking, "How much do I have left?" Start asking, "What am I willing to give so that this day becomes eternity?" And if you find the courage to answer, if you make this choice, then your life will cease to be a fragile coin hidden in a safe. It will become a torch burning, lighting the way for others. And even when that torch goes out, its light will continue to shine for a long time. That is depth. That is life.